So as you all know, President Donald Trump named Brett Kavanaugh as the replacement to Justice Anthony Kennedy, and even though I think all of us expected whoever Donald Trump chose to be a disaster, Kavanaugh may be a bigger disaster than we all anticipated a Trump nominee would be, not just because he's expectedly socially conservative, but because he's also really bad on other issues like net neutrality. He thinks net neutrality is unconstitutional. Yeah. Also, he's in favor of the NSA's bulk data collection. I don't think I could take any judge seriously who thinks that the NSA's spying, warrantless spying on Americans is constitutional, because that's just a brazen violation of the Constitution. But nonetheless, Donald Trump chose this individual, and I'll tell you more about him after we watch the announcement.
It is my honor and privilege to announce that I will nominate Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court. Judge Kavanaugh has impeccable credentials, unsurpassed qualifications, and a proven commitment to equal justice under the law. A graduate of Yale College and Yale Law School, Judge Kavanaugh currently teaches at Harvard, Yale, and Georgetown. Throughout legal circles, he is considered a judge's judge, a true thought leader among his peers. He is a brilliant jurist with a clear and effective writing style, universally regarded as one of the finest and sharpest legal minds of our time.
Now, as usual, that was nothing more than fluff. Kavanaugh is essentially a right-wing partisan hack, just like Neil Gorsuch was. I don't ever expect anyone who's appointed to the Supreme Court on the left or the right to simply interpret the Constitution. I think that we all need to acknowledge the reality that Supreme Court justices are nothing more than partisan ideologues. I think the days of justices like Sandra Day O'Connor, who tried to interpret the Constitution in an objective manner, they're just over. Those days are long gone. Now we just get, members of either party's team playing for their side. Now, I don't expect Kavanaugh to be any less hacky than any other Supreme Court justice. So, as Adam Liptak of the New York Times reports, Kavanaugh has been a conservative powerhouse, issuing around 300 opinions. His dissents have often led to Supreme Court appeals, and the justices have repeatedly embraced the positions set out in Judge Kavanaugh's opinions. In 2011, Judge Kavanaugh dissented from a decision upholding President Barack Obama's healthcare law, but he did so on jurisdictional grounds. At a 2016 argument over Mr. Obama's climate change regulations, he indicated that environmental policy should be decided by Congress rather than the courts. He has also been open to using the First Amendment to strike down government regulations, dissenting from the full District of Columbia Circuit's decision not to rehear a 3-judge panel's decision upholding the Obama administration's net neutrality regulations. He said the government can no more tell internet service providers what content to carry than it can tell bookstores what books they can sell. The net neutrality rule is unlawful, he wrote, because the rule impermissibly infringes on the internet service provider's editorial discretion. His opinion on abortion rights, religious exemptions, and Mr. Obama's healthcare law share a common quality. They were all conservative, but none took an absolutist position. So that kind of gives you a little bit of insight into this guy's worldview. He doesn't view the internet as a utility. That's crucial for modern Americans to look for employment, to create businesses, to get access to information and news. He thinks it's just like television. So if internet service providers want to create internet packages that are akin to television packages too, then the government can't say anything about that. And if they do, it's unconstitutional. That's insight into someone who may very well be on the Supreme Court. That's terrifying. So, this individual is just devastating. And for me, one way that I kind of, as I alluded to earlier, am able to gauge just how serious a judge is about interpreting the Constitution and really how close they follow the Constitution, I always look to their stance on NSA spying to determine if they're truly trying to objectively interpret the Constitution and, they're not just being partisan hacks, because I don't think you'll find a more clear-cut example of the government violating the Constitution. So, he is in favor of the government violating the Constitution in the form of NSA spying. So as Dylan Matthews of Vox reports, Kavanaugh has also ruled in favor of the National Security Agency's expansive call record surveillance operation, arguing that collecting these records did not constitute a search, and that even if it did, the government can take such records if it has a special need to prevent terrorism, even if this burdens the constitutional rights of those searched. That's a truly expansive rationale that makes even many conservatives uneasy. He also worked to limit challenges to detention for terror suspects, and recently wrote that he thinks the former Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is unconstitutional on separation of powers grounds. So, I mean, as he is being lauded by conservatives for being a real scholar, for, objectively interpreting the Constitution and, staying true to a particular judicial philosophy, I can't take him seriously. How can you say with a straight face that you think the NSA spying on every single American is perfectly reasonable and constitutional? You're just not following the Constitution. You're doing mental gymnastics to get the policy that's unconstitutional to somehow adhere to the Constitution. But you can't. You can't do that because the NSA's bulk data collection violates the Fourth Amendment. It just does. So I don't take him seriously. So no matter what, the point is that Senate Democrats have got to do everything in their power to resist this guy. He's bad news for the country. He could potentially strike down issues like abortion, Roe v. Wade. Before, he wouldn't state his position on Roe v. Wade. When Bush appointed him to a federal judgeship and he was asked by Chuck Schumer about Roe v. Wade, well, he said, look, the Supreme Court, they set that precedent. I adhere to the principle of stare decisis, and I'm not going to overturn decades of precedent. I can't do that. But he didn't say what he would do in the event he were in a position on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. So this guy, he's got to be resisted. But unfortunately, Democrats like Doug Jones, they're already kind of giving us signs that they're going to roll over and die and approve him. So Chuck Schumer he's saying the right things right now, but he's done that before. He's talked tough before, and he backed down within days. So I don't know that this isn't a foregone conclusion, and I really, really hope Democrats can do whatever they can to delay his appointment until after the midterms, or just block it altogether. I mean, maybe they can do something with regard to quorum where they boycott his confirmation hearings. They've got to pull out every fucking trick that they've got right now, because this guy will impact this country for decades if he's confirmed. And that's not what this country needs right now.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.